Individual peace starts with you individually. It starts with your breathing as a fundamental response to life. It's not a radical approach. It's a very fundamental approach. Next time somebody around you gets an anxiety attack or an asthma attack or emphysema or something with the lungs, just suggest to them that they alter their breathing reference. Instead of breathing up here like this, that's just making it worse. Because you hear it and you go, oh God, I am dying. And especially when that asthmatic wheeze comes up here and he goes, and then if you have to throw up and you can't, and then you really feel like you're lost. So you say, open your mouth, breathe through your nose. It's plugged, I can't breathe through your mouth, breathe through your elbow, breathe through your forehead. We don't care what's plugged, keep breathing it in. When the peace starts to settle, it radiates around through the body. It's a very funny undulating thing. It goes on. It's not stale. Peace is very much alive. It's in the asthma wheeze. It's in the pain in the neck. It's in the pain in the back and the shoulder. The peace is in there because we didn't do anything except drop the pressure and the peace is there. Do you know how we know that biblically? Here's this guy, I think they call him Jesus or something like that. Joshua, Jesu. They had a name for him. He got on a boat with his followers, and the boat just started going into the stormy weather, and it was really bad. They said, peace, be still. And everybody else heard him. But you know what he said? Peace. Be still. Because he didn't tell the peace, be still. Peace. To the other elements, be still. And as they became still, peace settled on the water and the ocean around them.
One of the things that most of us deal with here on this planet is the crisis of identity. And that whole syndrome that goes with who am I really? It works something like this. My mind tells me I should be a certain way. So then I attempt to do all those things that match up to what my mind tells me. Except I'm not happy because I don't do those things. But then I've got this should hanging over me. I should do that because it's really quite ideal. And if anyone could do that, they would be really perfect. And we set ourselves up for the failure in that process. We can do things rather excellent here in terms of excellence, but perfect, it isn't going to be here because we're not in a state of static beingness where it's just still. We're in a state of movement, and the state of movement brings with it the falderall of knocking things over, which is a failure, not performing, which is a failure, not wanting to perform, which is another failure. In other words, everything we decide to do or not do, we can call a failure. So we then run the identity of a failure, but then something inside says, but I'm not a failure either. But then I'm not doing my spiritual exercises, so I'm a spiritual failure. Then they come to me and they say, I'm not getting anywhere with my spiritual exercises. I'm not getting the results that I'm after. And I say, okay, well, what are the results that you're after? And some of them will lay out to me this far out, I don't know quite how to describe it, far out thing, place, feeling, idea, color. And I say, why do you want that? Why? What is that going to do for you? Well, if I accomplish that, then I will be spiritual. No, you won't. It has very little to do with spiritual. It has to do with manipulating neural energy through the eyes and the brain. And stress and strain can do that, and drugs and hallucinations and illusions can do that. It might not have anything to do with spirituality. Then they say, well, you mean I'm not a failure in my SEs? I'll say, no, I'm not saying that you're not a failure. I'm just saying that you're not a failure that way. They say, oh, then I am a failure. I said, no, I'm not saying that you're a failure. Well, am I successful? I say, well, are you doing your SEs? I say, well, no. And I'll say, well, then guess what? And they say, well, then I'm a failure. And I say, no, you're not even a failure if you don't do them, because you got to be aware that you're not doing them, and being aware you're not doing them is part of doing them. They go, then I have a little success. And I say, just a little. But bring your little success to me, and I'll amplify it for you. If you bring nothing, then I can amplify nothing. Can't do anything more than what you do in terms of any form of presentation of your life to the world. Even if they brought the failure, we could do something with that. But they've got to be able to turn to the traveler in times of good as well as times of stress. Not for anything to happen. That's not the process for anything to happen, because nothing is really going to happen here. I mean, nothing's ever really happened here. It's the same thing over and over and over, and it's just different people's faces and different names, but for the most part, the person is doing their same drama on whoever they're living with or whoever they want to live with. They go into the same numbers and they run the same thing out there. And sometimes they get sick and tired of being tired and sick, and they quit it for a while and think that things have changed. And it isn't too long until they go back to the customary way of doing things, which is called the habitual response. That habitual response then becomes this type of a thought process. Here I am back being drunk again. I'm just nothing but a no good drunk. The question arises in that. Are there such things as good drunks? Are there such things as rich drunks and wealthy? Or are they all just no good? It's like, gee, do we have to ask questions? Yes, if you're going to label yourself with some form of crisis identification, it might be nice to label yourself in a very accurate way, so that when you're called, you can respond in the state of emergency. I know it's difficult that every time you do something, it's wrong, and then you're afraid to do something again because you know it's just going to be wrong again, and you can never please the person. I have a very dear friend that I used to buy a birthday present for. And it seemed like no matter what the present wasn't what he wanted. That was sort of hard because he told me what it was he wanted, and then I went and bought it. But then in the meantime, he changed his mind. And I hopped all over him about changing his mind about the present. And he said, well, aren't I allowed to change my mind? And it's, yes, you are allowed to change your mind. And I just sort of said, and I'm allowed not to have to conform to birthday present syndromes. And so that ended up. Next year, it came around and said, I just called you up so you could wish me happy birthday. I said, that's very nice of you. I'm glad that you did that. And he said, well? I said, well? He said, are you going to wish me happy birthday? I said, no. You've done that, and that's enough. You're the only one that knows how to wish you the happy birthday that you want to have. And no matter how I say it or what I do, it's not going to be as satisfactory as you doing it, because you know exactly what it is you want. What did you give yourself? And he told me. I said, I've never thought of that. He says, yeah, very few people would have, because I'm unusual in a lot of ways and have peculiar tastes, but I just got it for myself and treated myself and took care of myself. And I was feeling so relieved to think I don't have to make this person feel good by giving them the best birthday present they can ever have. I haven't, to this day, given them another birthday present. Christmas present, maybe. It depends on whether I think they're going to change their mind or not. Okay, what that leaves me in a position then is being clairvoyant to look into a person's mind to see what they're going to do or not do. Who wants to waste their time doing that? That's called boring. Because in 3 seconds, anybody in this room, anybody listening to me, watching me, can change their mind from one point of view to another point of view to a radical point of view. The difficulty we have is that we can't sustain the point of view from a center of beingness. So we sustain our point of view from a center of jealousy, which is a statement of saying, I'm going to lose, or a center of hate, which is a statement of saying, I hate you because you have something on me that you can use against me to hurt me, so I hate you. From a statement of polarization called, here I am and there you are, and let's keep it that way. But don't be far away from me. These type of identificational crises that we go through are all made under emotional duress or stress, positive or negative. There are times when the Spirit moves in and through you that your emotions, your feelings will come up very high and strong, very powerful. And in those few moments, you can commit yourself to some of the most outlandish, outrageous behavioral actions that you can imagine, because when that flows through you, you are Superman beyond Superman. You're more than supernatural, you're supernatural. And you can accomplish a tremendous amount in that. But then we all know that that emotion moves away, because nothing is permanent here. It's not a perfect process. It moves in and out. And when it moves away, we're left with an emotional decision that's got little things tied onto it that we hate. And we have to deal with it. And we don't want to deal with it. We want to put it aside, and we opt for another emotional approach. And we think because we've opted for another approach and it feels good, we don't have to do this one that we started. All we're doing is delaying the payment of that till later, because these things accumulate down the line. Let me give an example of accumulation. The young girl grows up in the family, and there's been a lot of discord and unhappiness, and she's identified with it and brought it into herself. And she goes on into high school, and she's not the prettiest girl around and doesn't get dated to everything, and that says, I'm not pretty, I'm not worthy, I'm not wanted, I'm not desired. And she feels bad about herself and is always picking at her face to prove the point she's not pretty. And then she goes on to college and decides that she will study real hard because she's not getting the dates, because she's not pretty and she's not worthwhile. And anyway, it's been going on for years. And then she finally does get married and has a baby and wonders if it's really hers, because how could she have such a beautiful thing, because she's so bad and she's so terrible and have such a terrible heritage. And all this time, these emotional accumulations are building and building and building and building. And one night, her husband comes in and he's upset over something, and she's been upset that day because generally she's upset. Things aren't going her way. They aren't matching up to her ideal of the emotional energy she has. And she says, I burned your dinner. And he says, that figures. And she just goes off her rocker. She goes crazy. They call an ambulance. They take her away all strapped up, put under psychiatric care. And he says, what did you say to her that kicked her off? And he says, I said, it figures. He said, nobody goes crazy when you say it figures. I said, she did. There must be more to it than that. Ask her. She's the one that has accumulated this. She had a lot going when she was very little, and through high school, and through college. And when I got to her, you know, she was a little neurotic, but I liked the idea. It was kind of exciting. Didn't know what she was going to do next. It was nifty. But I didn't want her to go crazy. I mean, all she did was burn the dinner, but it was about the 400th time she's burned it. So when she told me, I said, it figures. The psychiatrist says, well, that's not enough to set anybody off. Well, she's also been studying this particular course of a certain thing. Do you think that did it? The psychiatrist says, I'll bet you that has to be it. Because we're looking for an isolated instance out of this person's life that kicked them off instead of looking at the person's life. Because they started kicking off from the moment they were born in that separation from our mother. We start to feel the alienation and the polarization instantly. And from that moment on, we attempt to run identification with something that's stable, that's something that's going to be permanent there for us. And all Mom has to do is yell at us or slap us for reaching for something, and then we immediately start reconforming our personality to match how Mom wants us to do it, or Dad. And some of us were able to do it real well. We either did it real well when they were there, or we didn't do anything while they were there. And then when they left, then we did it, called sneaking around behind their back. Then we were caught sneaking, and we were called little sneaks. Then somebody says, I love you. You think, how could you love a little sneak who this, you can't love me, and I won't let you love me, and I won't let you get close to me. And the person says, can't help it, I love you anyway. Now it's miserable because I can't be close to you. Would you let me be close? So why would you want to be close with me? Because I love you. But if you knew me, you wouldn't love me. That may be true, but I don't know you, and I love you. Well, I don't want you to get to know me because then you'll hate me. You're not giving me a chance. You're trying to control my behavior to suit what you think I should and should not do in relationship to you. I don't want you to control my behavior. I don't want my behavior to be offensive to you. But I would like to be able to come up and say, hi, I love you, and you don't want me to. You want me to write it on a piece of paper and put it under a rock, and you'll pick it up on Thursdays. I'm not going to do that. Well, if you really love me, you do it. So now comes the testing phase. So he says, all right, and he writes a note, puts it under the rock, and sure enough, Thursday she comes along and gets it. He did it. He really does love me, but maybe he just did that. Maybe he really doesn't love me. Can this person win with her? No, she's got it all wired. She's wired backwards. Then he walks away from her. And then she comes back to her perfected ideal of what she should really be and strives earnestly for that, trying to please once again the ideal, denying her feelings, denying the emotions, denying the thought, and striving for this other object, and it never comes present. Why? Because it's unreal. Then somebody comes along and promises drugs or mushrooms or some other way to attempt to come back to ourselves, and we'll take it rather than sit with the emotional disturbance that we produce that hurts. Because I don't like the emotional disturbance. That's the trap of identification. I don't like the emotional disturbance. Emotions aren't set up to disturb you, but what happens is You look at life and you say, this should be the result. Pop, right here. And it shows up like this. You're looking for the fist doubled, and it shows up as a flat hand. What it says is, you didn't see accurately what was really going on, and while it was going on, you ran an assumption about what it's to be, and your assumption was inaccurate based upon the evidence that you had. Then they say, don't you correct me. Don't you process me. Don't you tell me. It's like, I don't have to. Look at the results that you've got, and it'll tell you yourself. Oh, yeah. If I just look at the results. Can anybody else see those results? Mm-hmm. Do they know that I do that type of thing? Yeah. How do they know that? They can see you do it. Can they see it when I do it in my mind? No, they don't care when you just do it in your mind. Why not? Because they can't read your mind. They can't smell it out. They don't care. As far as they know it, you're just cuckoo up there, waiting for the door to open to go, cuckoo, cuckoo. And that's all they're concerned about. When you strike the hour, they'll go home. That's all their interest is with you. But you see, I want them to be able to share my mind. I want them to be able to share my emotions. I want. And that just keeps running, and the person never accomplishes the sharing because they're so busy wanting, they don't set up a form by which it can be shared. I want to share a message with you. I must bring myself, put it in this chair, open my mouth, and put it forward. That's the method by which I do it. Why couldn't I just sit home, in my own home, and let you just get it? Well, you're so busy running identity crises on yourself that you won't listen. If you did listen, you hear somebody saying, time out, time, shower, go shower. Don't do what you're doing, stop. And the person's saying, I don't know who's talking in there, but I'm not paying attention to that because I've got to measure up to the standards and the rules and the regulations that I have set up that are perfect. Then you go talk to a therapist, and the therapist says, where'd you come up with such ridiculous standards? And you leave the therapist saying, they don't know what they're talking about. They couldn't help me. They wouldn't agree with me. Well, if you're after agreement, go look in the mirror and talk to yourself. Oh. Do you think they did know what they were talking about? Maybe not. But they might have known that your rules that you ran were not effective for you because they were not producing what you wanted. See, it's not only that, it doesn't produce what I want. I can't get other people to produce what I want. That's the second emotional trap of identification. If I do this, you should have done this. If I went to A, you should have gone to B. Why didn't you do that? And you know what the other person says? I didn't feel like it. And you say, what have feelings got to do with it? Feelings have got a lot to do with it because that's what I use not to do it. Well, that's not fair. You should use your intellect because I did. Okay. When they say, I think you should do this, the other person doesn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Don't tell me you felt like it. No, I thought it over and just decided I didn't want to. I thought about it. Did they really? Probably not. Did they run the same thing? Probably. They just changed vocabulary. Why? That's what you demanded. You demanded agreement in vocabulary instead of how are you going to do this? What are the results going to be? What's your method? See, far too often, the whole process of self-identification is you be my clone so that I'll know that I'm doing good because you'll do the same thing, and therefore it'll be okay because we're both doing the same thing. Well, golly, a lot of people in the mental institutions are doing the same thing, And you really can't say that that's all that bright. And a lot of water buffaloes run through the jungles, stampeding, and I don't know if we could say that's all that bright. It might be more important that we say, wait a minute, I'm just going to see how I feel about it. I'm going to think it over. Because after I come out of this emotional high and I go down pretty low, how am I going to feel when I get there? Am I still going to feel like I can do it? And you can intellectually dive into the emotional maelstrom, go down at the bottom, take a look and say, no, I couldn't do it then because that enthusiastic energy is what I needed to keep it going. And once that's gone, that ends it. Then don't start it. Just drop it away. Say, oh, no, it didn't work. Now you say, well, what if I go down to the emotional doldrums and look and I say, no, I can still do it okay. Even if I go into depression, I can still accomplish that. Take off and do it. You've got a sure winner. No matter what happens, you're going to pull it off. You don't always have to be hyping yourself up in order to do it. Does that mean that you don't move on your highs? I'd be very careful about moving on an emotional high unless I've looked at a way to sustain it. Because if it starts to go down, I've got to have some way to bring it back up again. Be skeptical of yourself and your involvement with yourself emotionally and mentally. Being skeptical means check it out. Look for an alternative in how you can do it. See, most of us make these type of negative decisions. I've got money, and I don't know, the roof is leaking, or whether I should pay the insurance on the car. Those are both negative decisions. The only decision that's positive is to keep the money in the bank or use it for yourself, but I've either got to pay for the roof or pay the car insurance. All we're doing then is hoping against hope that it won't rain anymore or you won't get in a wreck. But you can't do both. And so you sit in the moment of success having failure internally as it's reflected from there into you. You might say, well, which would you do? Guess. Well, what's more important is, what would you do? Gee, I don't know. They're both bad, aren't they? No, they just are negative decisions that we end up making. We rarely end up making a positive decision because we won't look at the alternative of how to do it. Well, what's an alternative? Just patch the roof where it's leaking, and it won't take a lot of money. Yeah. And shop around for cheaper insurance. Well, I never thought of that. Well, yeah, but you got to think of that. Well, but I didn't feel like it. Well, see, there you go again. The feelings run against your mind. The mind can't then see a clear way. So then it just sees the feeling, emotional way, and mostly it's distraught. So then it has vulnerability, anxiety, hurts. But we rarely ever do anything in this world that is not an attempt towards happiness. Yeah, even people who commit suicide are making an attempt towards happiness. They just can't take what they're in. And, as sad as that is, that's where they're going to. Always there's that movement towards the happiness. But we look at happiness as being a destination, then it's very difficult because we'll keep changing the standards of the definition of our destination. I want it on the seashore. No, now I want it on the mountaintop. Well, no, now I'll just have it on in the canyon. Well, no, let's put it at the base of the tree. Well, I don't know. but I'm so miserable now it doesn't matter. Well, it's because of that type of interaction that the misery appears. Happiness is part of the process of going towards that goal. Well, then how do you have it? Don't make selections that are against your emotional self. Well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Don't make things against my emotional self. Stop and ask yourself, how am I going to feel about this if I get in it? But when I get in it, I never stop and ask me anything like that. I know. That's why you have to train yourself to ask in the beginning, so that when you get into the situation, you've got the reference point. Hold it and observe it. See what it is, because you may be able to extract yourself. Because lust, desire, can move through the body, through the emotional body, and wreak havoc with what you're doing. I remember years ago they used to say, the girl did one indiscreet thing and it ruined her entire life. Well, I'm not too sure that it ruined her entire life, but I'm sure it was that portion was pretty messed up. Well, what did she do? Did she stay in the town and become known as the nasty girl of the city? Probably not. She probably left, went someplace else and got another star. That's an alternative way to do it. If I can't do it here this way, I will go someplace else and do it this way. Every one of us, if we look back in our past, we got things in there that shake. It's like, I wouldn't want anybody to know that I was drunk and threw up on Main Street and in the middle of the night, and then the cop arrested me and threw me in jail. That'd be a terrible thing if they found out. Well, see, now you just told them. Yeah, but see, that was a long time ago. And if I tell it, it's different than if you find out and you tell it. Do you understand that? It comes back to this old thing of confession is good for the soul. But some people are confessing every little emotional disturbance. Every little single one gets confessed till the other person gets sick of it. They say, wait until you get a good one. Just hold off for a while. Well, what would be a good one? One that I wouldn't want to do if I had the chance to do it. That'll be the one for you to tell me. What one will that be? Well, now you got to tell your story. Say, well, you do one, and if you think that's it, I'll let you know. Why? Because I'm going to hold off until I hear how bad yours is. Then I'll tell you how bad mine is. The whole double standard process that goes on as portrayed in the movies and television. The guy can go do what he wants to do, but if the girl does it, she's fallen. She's fallen so low, they stomps her in the mud. Doesn't even know it. And then he bereaves himself with his emotional crisis and misidentification and comes running back, and the faint heart that he stomped in the mud now turns her back on him and says, take a long walk off the short pier. But who is she to tell that to him? She is justified. Because you sit there in the movie and say, he got what he deserved. He got what he put out. He says, but I didn't mean to get that. All I meant to do was to validate my position that it's okay. And to validate my position of okay, I had to invalidate yours. I didn't want to, but I had to. It was either me or you. And when the choice was made, it was you go. That brings us to the sad context of life and the content in that. You are the only one that really knows how to make you happy. You're the only one. People may do things that you'll respond to in a happy way, but you're the only one that knows how to bring that response about, because that preoccupies you is the thing that you're really seeking and going towards. And it can be positive, hopefully, and most of the time it's negative, dastardly so. Then the person beats themselves up with their negativity, and that dumps on the spouse. Then the spouse feels so bad because the other one is beating themselves up so bad with negative thoughts, but there's nothing they can do about it except to say, don't do that. It's not true. It doesn't matter. Why are you doing it? Because they're doing the what if number. But what if this? But what if that? But what if this? If you handle your emotions in this moment and your thinking in this moment so that it's clear, it's concise, you can see how the outcome can be, you've looked at the parameters of behavior, you can then, as just a radical, fundamental action, sit back and enjoy yourself emotionally, which is life is about, knowing that all the parameters are handled and there's no chance for disaster to appear. Now, I'm not saying then that a disaster appears. I'm saying, no, it does not, because you've handled those areas. The areas where the disaster does appear, you said that it was different than what it is. So therefore, you got the fist instead of the flat hand. The big game that we play is, if I say it's so, it's so. Nonsense. You may be saying it's so for a whole bunch of ulterior reasons, and none of them are anything that anybody wants to vote for. Well, then do you disbelieve everybody and what they say? No. Do you believe them? No. What do you do then? Well, I trust them to do exactly what they're going to do. But that'll hurt you. No, it won't. Why not? Because I'm not giving myself over to them to have them hurt me. Well, if you don't share yourself, now sharing's different than giving yourself over. I mean, I'll let them hold my hand, but when they leave, that's got to stay at the arm. That's sharing. But if I set up standards that I think they should start responding to because I held their hand, then they don't do that, then I get hurt. Guess who did all that? Me. Well, are they doing it on purpose? No. Well, wait a minute then. How about these marriages wherein the husband starts to look at other women? Does that mean he should be true to his feelings and go out and lay with all of them? No, it doesn't mean that at all. What does it mean? It means that he should take a look at his marriage and see wherein something is not being fulfilled, that there is a lack that's allowing him to move away from this person and look someplace else. So he comes back to the pattern of the marriage and looks at the marriage. And he may say, you know, honey, I've got this eye that appreciates a beautiful shape. And I just look. I'm a window shopper. I never go in and buy or try on the merchandise. She may say, oh, that's nice, because when I see a good-looking man, well-built, I recognize that also. And I'm not doing anything with that except acknowledging to myself that I recognize that, and the feelings come up inside of me that let me know that's so. He says, yeah, that's what happens to me too. Well, what you got here are two healthy people. Acknowledging the feelings as they come up and letting that be okay, and not either one taking the other's feelings and saying, yeah, but I think you're going to go do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And the person says, I'm not doing that. But you did before. But before we agreed on that. Now we've changed agreements. Yeah, but see, now I'm in this emotional hurt. And it hurts. But now I'm coming out of it. So when I come out of it, I may like the agreement again. Then that's the time you sit down and look real closely to see if you really want to, because what you're going through now was tied on to the other open agreement. It's tied on to it. So you may say, wait a minute. Don't want that. Yeah, it feels like it now. But I'm not going to move on it. I'm not going to let my emotions run my intellect. I'm not going to run negative identifications against myself. Well, I want to go with her. Why can't I? If I weren't married, I could. And then start hating the one you love. Hey, that's misery, isn't it? That hurts. Say, well, what is the cure? You have to take time to come back to establish the center of validation inside of you. You have to come back and sit down, and I don't mean sit down and watch television, because you're doing that for the television or for the movie or go out to have dinner. You're doing that to eat. I'm talking about coming back and sitting down inside of you in a chair and stare at a blank wall if you have to. But it might be nicer to close your eyes if you can keep the mind from chattering. And just let yourself know that you are a child of God, that that's just the way it is. You don't have any more freedom nor any more strength or power than anybody else. But you can't make yourself less than what you are, because it doesn't do it that way either. So it's an acknowledgement that I am a child of God. I have access to divine power. And I'm just going to sit here in this and just be me for a while. And if that me has some negative feelings, then they're just going to have to be negative feelings, and they're going to have to be okay. And I'm just going to sit here and run them out to the end without running them anywhere. So as the feelings come up, you just let the feelings come up, and pretty soon they start changing. All of a sudden, a little joy comes up. You think, where did that come from? That was really nice. That's you. That was nice. Well, why don't you write it down someplace so you'll know that you had a nice feeling? Get your little journal out. On this day, I had a wonderful, beautiful feeling. That's really me. See? And be sure to put that up someplace when you otherwise say, what a terrible person I am. You can read it that says, no, you're not. Remember that you are a member in the body of Christ, in the body of God. And you've got to exercise the authority to be in it. And you can't do that by running yourself out into the world with false standards. That's worshiping false gods. And you created it yourself. So you created something that's less than you, and you're worshiping it as something bigger than you. That's not too smart. In fact, that's called stupid. That's okay, though, if stupid can be stupid without being bad. Because we all have that place inside that's pretty stupid. It just seems like, yeah, I missed that. I went right over my head. But keep your eyes open, because it'll come around again, because things that go around go around. And it'll come back too. But if you miss it, you get hit again. Then we call you dumb. Why don't you watch? The first time it hit you and you saw them raise their hand, didn't you know it was coming again? I wasn't watching. Keep your eyes open. Well, I had my eyes open, but I was busy, preoccupied with the emotional, mental occupation of all this negativity. No, stay present. Why? Because they're swinging. That's why. Duck. Is life going to always be like that? What's wrong with that? It's exciting. That's not exciting. That's miserable. No. You're trying to make what is exciting miserable, and it isn't going to work that way. But you can bring yourself back around to say, well, it is exciting. I just don't like the results. It's because you were not prepared for the way those results were going. You see, we all want to deal in truth. We all want the truth to set us free, and the truth goes like this: information that will give me predictable results. Truth is information that gives me predictable results. If I tell the truth here, this will happen. If I do this in truth, this will happen. And you do it and it happens, and you go, wow, I'm free. The truth sets you free. So I'll deal in truth. Then I don't care what the other people do. I'll be free. And while they're upset, I'll still be free. But then they're my friends, so I should feel upset with them. That doesn't make them feel any better. If you want to help your friend who's not feeling good, laying on the ground with them won't make them feel better. You may be crowding their space. Start to feel good around them. Let them see what it looks like. Start to produce happiness. Let them see what it looks like. Start sharing it with them. Let them feel what it feels like. Talk to them about happiness so they hear what that sounds like. And they'll start catching on to it. Where we think, we go in the focus. Where we go in the focus, the emotions move to make it take place, and then the body acts it out. If you have that certain clear way of thinking, and you have that certain flow of clear emotions, the body will physically move on it with clarity, and you will get the results that you've been after, or praying for, or hoping, or wishing, as long as you put your body on your word, on your mind, on your emotion. You can't lay and think about showering while you're in the bed and do the shower. You got to get your body up and put it on the shower. You got to pick it up and move it, which is sometimes a gargantuan type of effort, because it's going to be much easier to just flop over here for another 10 minutes. What we then see a person doing is setting up the customary habit that's going to trail off into the future behind them. And when they stop, it's going to bump into them. They're going to say, I thought I left that habit behind. You never changed it. You didn't do away with it. You've been just modifying it a little at a time, but you never broke it away. So a person said to me, well, John Roger, I've been studying with you now for about 5 years, and I don't smoke anymore. And I said, is that right? They said, yeah. I said, so you've given it up completely? He said, well, pretty much. I said, now wait a minute. You understand what smoking is? The person said, well, yeah, it's 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I said, no. That's smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Do you know what smoking is? And he said, one pack? I said, no, that's 1 pack. And we looked at each other for a few minutes, and I started laughing. He said, well, what's the joke? I said, smoking is putting this thing in your mouth and going, and then letting the air out. He says, oh, you mean like a drag on the cigarette? I said, yeah, that's called smoking. I said, do you still do that? He says, well, yeah, but not as much as I used to. I said, well, you haven't quit. He says, what have I done? I said, you slowed down. He says, well, is that bad? I said, no, I'm not saying anything's bad. I just knew you hadn't quit. And if I'd said, oh, yeah, our worst chain smoker finally quit, and then people see that you're still not chain smoking, but linking it together anyway through the day, they're going to wonder why I said what I said and why you're doing what you're doing. He said, but it feels like I've quit. I said, have you? No. He said, well, but I thought I had. I said, had you? He said, no. I said, so what does your thinking and your feeling tell us? He said, that I deceive myself. I said, why do you deceive yourself? He said, because I like to smoke. And I said, then why don't you smoke? He said, don't you care? I said, no, I don't care. I said, I thought you cared. I said, I do care in terms of, I sure wished you didn't smoke because it's not healthy for you. The air's polluted enough without putting smoke in your lungs. No, I'm not for that idea, because that'd be like for me being for you drinking poison. It may solve your thirst, but it's going to kill you. So no, I'm not for you hurting yourself. He said, well, but you said that you don't like to be around the people that smoke. I said, that's true, I don't. Well, that means you don't like me. I said, no, you're not smoking now. He said, well, if I lit up a cigarette, what would you do? I said, well, I would see whether I had anything more important to tell you than the cigarette. If the cigarette was more important, I'd walk away. And if what I had to tell you was more important, I'd finish it up and then I'd walk away. He says, well then, smoking to you doesn't make any difference. I said, not spiritually, it makes no difference at all. None. Physically it does. Why? My nose plugs up, my eyes will water. With the energy I work with and the negativity that comes off people towards me, I can smell bad enough as it is. I don't need odor of smoke, eau de fumée, along with everything else. He says, well, what's the thing when you say then that people can't be initiated after a certain level if they smoke? I say, because they're running an addiction. The addiction could be smoking, eating, sex. Whatever is running you is an addiction. They say, well, you mean you can't have sex anymore? If it runs you, it's an addiction. If you're using it as a close, intimate sharing on a personal, one-to-one basis with another person for mutual upliftment and closeness, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about promiscuity, where everything that has a skirt, you got to go hop in bed with it. Or if it wears pants, the other way too. He said, well, then if I'm addicted to coffee, I said, then it's an addiction. He said, well, I got to eat food or I'll die. I say, I know, food's an addiction too, but it's one that Spirit's willing to put up with. Well, the big thing here is because of the addictive patterns of the emotions and the feelings and people that are addicted, and you tell to smoking as an example, or to alcohol, and you go take that away from them, they'll kill you. They're ready to fight because they've taken it personally. They are identified as a little white, long, cylindrical thing with a filter on one end and a red light on the other end. That's them. And you take that away from them, they go wacko. Or if they're drinking, and you tell them, don't drink, they have bottles stashed everywhere. The addictive pattern comes out of the emotional turmoil. When I'm smoking, I quiet down. It settles me down. I feel more peaceful, more calm. I know, but you never got to find out what was causing you the upset. And it's still there running you. Oh. And when you get drunk, you go out of your mind so you don't have to deal with that. But the thing that caused you to go out of your mind is still running you. And you don't know that. If it's still running you and it's from this level, guess who's in charge? Something from this level that's not you. You've given yourself over to the very thing you've created. You created a false image of God and you're worshiping it, and now it's got you hooked and you're trapped. And there's no way out for you except to cast down the idol. To just cast it down and stop. When that emotional conviction whips through you, you stand back from the addiction without withdrawal symptoms. You stand back with purpose and conviction. And in truth, the energy of who you are fills up that other space that you've given over to addictions, and the patterns drop away. Not that you have to do anything. They just can't hang on. But you see, I got to smoke because I go out to the single bars and everybody's smoking, everybody's drinking, and if I put a cigarette in one hand and beer in the other, it keeps them busy. Why don't you take your prayer beads and count prayer beads? Not in a singles bar. Why don't you get 7-Up? Get ginger ale, and then people think that you got a mixed drink of some kind. How about the smoke? Get 2 7-Ups. 1 ginger ale, 1 7-Up, 1 Coke. My hands will freeze. I know, see, you've got all the answers. You see how the addiction can run you. You got all the answers why you're going to do what you do, so go do it. Does that hurt you? No. Are you going to do anything about it? No. Are you going to do anything for it? No. What are you going to do? I'm going to work with those people who want to work in the most clear, spiritual, conscientious way. And when you get to that place, come on around. You must turn to me in your addiction, or turn to me when there's no addiction. But there must be the turning for no result except your own clarity of purpose. The clarity of purpose becomes its own motivator. And you just start lifting to the greater behavior that is not a change, it is an amplification. You're still you, just a bigger, better, more magnificent you, and maybe the true you, not just a partial aspect of yourself, reflected through your habits or your customs or your traditions. Does it take great courage to see the face of God? Yeah, because you got to see the face of addiction. Maybe it's chocolate cake, maybe it's chocolate sundaes, or maybe it's cookies. I don't know what your addiction is. If it comes in and pushes you towards it, you'll know it's an addiction. You might say, well, sometimes I get hungry and I want to get something to eat. Is that an addiction? It's more this type of thing. Does the hunger say chocolate mousse? Or does it say it's lunchtime? No, it says chocolate mousse. That's an addiction. What if it says lunchtime? That's nutrition. What if I go have the chocolate mousse? You can't fool it. It knows the difference. Hey, but can I have these things and enjoy them? If they run you, know that it's an addiction and you can have it. The knowing that it's addiction is part of your pattern of lifting up above it. You don't have to do anything with it today. Just saying, yeah, I run this addiction called jealousy. I run this addiction called anger. I run this addiction called hate or fear. And I run that. All right, see me run it. Next day you start to run it. You may not run as long. You may not start it as soon. And it may take you longer to bring it back down. So you say, I've changed the energy now so that I'm just writing on what the energy is. And I'm just being true to the feeling. When it goes down, I acknowledge I'm down. When it's up, I acknowledge I'm up. And I continue on because I've seen where I'm going to go. I've seen what I'm going to do. And I've got a good idea of what that is. And I'm going to be true to my own rational truth and to my own goals that I put out there. And I will be my own man and follow into the Spirit. Beru Speshan.